Brought to you by Bowlersmart.com. Trusted by bowlers around the world since 2004. By Lightning Strikes Bowl, home of Bowlers Mart Pro Shop. By Platinum Ford, drive the difference. By Fire Lake Bowling Center, 24 state-of-the-art lanes. By True Grit Coatings, drive on our passion. By Roll to Grip, king of them all. By 900 Global, striking worldwide.
Good morning and welcome back to the Beef and Barnsey Show. I am Barnsey, joined by the inimitable Stuart Williams. How are you this morning, Beef Stew?
I'm good. I had to just change the name of the show because I didn't read my text messages immediately, and I thought I was doing this by myself. So it was Ask Me Anything. Now it's Ask Us Anything.
Well, it can still be Ask You Anything.
Yeah, coming in hot.
That's what do we got? What's new since last Tuesday?
No, well, I've bowled league twice since I got back on a Monday night, and I went 180, 250, 250 the first week, and this week I changed it up. I went 250, 260, 180. So,
all right,
versatile.
Okay, well, that's
useful.
Something. I bowled league last night. It did not go fantastic. So,
no.
Where do you see the new idol in comparison to a Summit and Phase 2? Would it be something to supplant both? Would it be a complement to the new idol?
What would be a complement to the new idol?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
All right. I don't really see it as in comparison to the Summit because I think that the Summit is very strong and very niche. Like US Open, Summit great. Like low scoring, really need a lot, uber control. I think the Summit is really good for that.
Mm-hmm.
Phase 2, I think that you're more closer to what the idol is. I think this new idol's a little earlier than a Phase 2, which is kind of how the original idol was for me.
Okay.
Maybe a little, like, I feel like they're in the same part of the bag, and historically, when we had both the idol and the Phase 2, it was generally one or the other of them would work, and there wasn't really, I certainly wasn't smart enough to figure out why one would work in one place but the other one didn't, and so on and so forth. Complement to the new idol for me, the easiest ball to move to once that idol is a little bit lazy is the Sublime. So yeah.
My idol, I drilled a super tall pin, made it flare a ton. Probably didn't need to. It's pretty strong on its own. But having watched it a little bit more and thrown it more myself, I feel like that you probably don't need that and a Phase 2 at the same time. They fit a pretty similar shot category. So if you're a Phase 2 lover, this is probably not going to be the one that you don't necessarily need to replace it necessarily. But having not thrown an original one, it's hard for me to say how close that is. But shot wise, continuation wise, it has a lot of similarities to that same kind of shot characteristic. And I know Ryan used it a ton this last week. It's immediately become kind of a benchmark ball for him. He really likes it. And so I think, but like Stu said, the Summit is both stronger and shinier at the same time. And so it has a little smaller window, I think, where it really stands out comparatively to this, which has that long continuation window that you really like. It's kind of a hallmark of the original idol, also the Phase 2. So, I'm hesitant to label balls as giant home runs or anything, but I think this one is pretty good.
Okay. Hey Nico, what's going on?
Nico.
Make chalkboards great again. Hey Adam. I don't know why. I guess Facebook has done something weird again because mine says ask us anything. So
Huh. Okay.
depends which one.
It does at that. I guess we had some more A squad, B squad issues over the weekend in the regionals, which is once again why we have one squad basically on the regular tours now. In the senior tours, each squad bowls an early and a late squad. You just have two days of qualifying to kind of even it out. And by and large, most of the time, it's a squad that has the advantage. Occasionally, it flips. It's kind of hard to figure out why it flips, but probably 80 to 90% of the time, a squad bowls better.
Yeah, I think some of it might have to do with what type of pattern it is. I think if there's a little bit of shape in the pattern, especially if it's kind of a medium pattern, it seems. Oh, sorry. If there's a little bit of shape in the pattern and it's a longer pattern, I feel like A always crushes B because of the house shot previously. If it's kind of like a shorter pattern, I feel like sometimes B has a chance because the like. I just don't think the lane. I don't think it's the lane machines. I think it's that some of the cleaners and some of the cleaners and some of the oils don't necessarily mix as well as they could do. And I don't think that. And I also think that depending on whether you get the mix exactly right, has issues with it also. And there's probably a lane out there telling me I'm totally, completely full of shit. But logically, you've got to work with us here a little bit because there's obviously a problem and it obviously happens regularly. So what do you want to blame?
Right.
Like, I mean, it isn't like Jesus and the Holy Spirit, is it? Like, so something must not be like making it do the right thing. So I tend to think that human error is more likely than error on a $40,000 piece of equipment, but that's just me.
Yeah. There's a lot of theories.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, overall, I think it makes more sense to blame and blame's a strong word, but I just think that it's more likely that there was a small error made by a human, like when they've got to mix two things together to make cleaner, or, you don't have the right cleaner with the right oil, or the oil change, or whatever.
Right.
I think that's more likely of a thing than the lane machine.
It seems like that it does not clean it as ideal as possible on the first pass, and so it keeps getting flatter as the weekend goes on, and the scores keep getting lower. And in a regional situation where you don't have access to run it several times in a row necessarily before you start, but that being said, even on the tour, when we bowl in the morning and the evening on the same pattern, scoring pace will move up and down all the time there, even on day 2 and day 3. So, I know the technology is pretty good, and the lane guys are trying to do as much as consistent as possible. So I don't think that that's necessarily that the protocols are not right. I just think now occasionally they don't sit very long, which doesn't help. But I would think in general that the cleaners have not kept up with the advancement in how much higher viscosity the oils are now. They don't seem to be able to get it all off.
Eric, yeah, I think you did a pretty nice job. I think you've got most of it covered. I think maybe you might have a gap depending on how much speed you have between the Venom Shock and your Purple Hammer. I think that Venom Shock is your weakest ball, is probably pretty strong cover wise.
Theorem's
asymmetrical though, so
okay. It's still not really super. Yeah,
I believe anyway.
If you're a little bit speed dominant, that's probably okay. But yeah, I would say that there's a spot in there for a hustle kind of type ball.
Or even your favorite, the Exponent Pro.
Exponent Pro.
Okay. Gentlemen, does applying surface to the ball, Omega Crocs, often weekly lower the longevity of the equipment? Often my gem is too strong. Yes and no. Because once you start hitting the surface, you're going to knock the peaks down. But like, if you don't do it, the ball isn't going to pick up as much. So if you don't do it at all, then it's not going to hook. So then you've lost the performance. But if you do it over a long period of time, it probably won't help. So there isn't really a right answer to that. I think that maybe what you can do is not apply surface every time and maybe apply some cleaner. And that, because really what you're doing is when you're applying the surface, you're also just cleaning the oil off. So if you're able to use a cleaner to do it, then maybe that's the happy medium and you do it every couple of weeks. So
makes sense.
And you're not on your own in saying often my gem is too strong for the league shot. The gem is often too strong and you don't need to add for a league shot. It's just often too strong based on where we bowl these days.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine a pattern that I could possibly bowl with the gem in Indy, no matter what they put out.
Right.
Like,
it's just a place that hooks kind of early. It's a little tight down lane.
Now in Shawnee, they could put almost anything down. I could use the gem. Because I mean, there's plenty of skid, and usually I want to play kind of straighter angles there. So gem, pretty good ball for there, I think.
Right.
All right, Richie Allen's got some deep and meaningful questions coming in here. Pleated or straight cut slacks? I think it's been a while since pleated were acceptable.
Well, pleated were more comfortable back in the day, for sure. They're a little roomier, but certainly not the in play today. I do like the cut, the slit at the bottom. I think they lay better at the shoe level, though. Nike did it. Fred Borden was the first person I ever saw do it, and he was doing it in the 80s, maybe the 70s. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't get many trousers that do that.
No, not a lot. So
one thing that is out for both me and Chris is the elasticated scrunchy at the bottom.
Oh,
that's out.
That's a horrid look. It's just
we're not into that. Now, and I'm fairly accepting that I'm probably not fashionable enough to be into that. But it's a no from me. And then cards or dominoes, iPads. Probably cards if I chose, but not really a huge cards or dominoes guy.
Cards for me. I like dominoes with the right crowd for sure, but how does the harsh reality compare to the
reality strike?
Okay.
To me, the harsh reality is I haven't used it that much yet, based on what we bowled on and then what we bowled on tour. From what I saw, it was a little more angular than the original reality, but it was way closer to the original reality than it was to the reality check strike. So yeah, I haven't really had much chance to play with that one. I think I might / probably will end up drilling one in Vegas to try, because I think that the kind of angles we're going to play in Vegas, I think it might be quite useful. I'm going on the assumption that we are bowling on something similar to what we bowled on last year, and I might be totally wrong, but I'm going with that assumption, and we'll see.
Yeah, it will be interesting. More B squad. Where was that?
Yeah, I think he's talking about when they bowled because Chris Delaney's in our region. Are you talking about the tournament in Kansas?
McPherson?
Yeah, because that just looked like a very challenging affair.
Yeah, I talked to the guys a little bit. It sounds like the problem that's happening in a lot of places right now. There's not a lot of new centers or new installs, and so I don't think we have necessarily some crews who are experts at installs, and so you're getting some maybe less than ideal lanes here and there because you have guys that don't have any experience doing it, uh, or maybe not any experience at all, and there's carpenters and they just come in and work. But um, yeah, I mean, Bo was nice to all the guys up in McPherson. He was letting guys know up front the pairs that were the lanes that were tricky since they installed. They needed to go practice on them and tried to help the guys out.
We lost you for a little bit
ADHD
there.
Whiskey, thank you for the super chat. My wife and I want to bring our two girls, 6 and 8, to the Masters in Vegas, our first live PBA event. Any advice or tips to give them the best experience? They're youth bowlers and love watching all of you on TV. Thank you.
Well, first off, thanks for bringing them. For me, you just got to be a little aware of when, if you look around while the bowling is going on, you will see a lot of players walking around. That is the best time to ask guys who aren't bowling for, pictures and autographs and stuff. Any of the guys who are on the floor or moving from pair to pair, they can't really do anything in terms of autographs. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. Second thing, if I was you, when I would have a look at some of my favorite bowlers and where they were in the house, and I would try and pick a spot and kind of stay in that spot, unless you have one bowl that you really love. Because with them being small, if you can get like somewhere to sit pretty close, you're going to be able to see more of the action. Whereas if you start moving around, you might end up where you can't see anything a lot of the time unless they're going to be on your shoulders or something. So for me, it's kind of interesting. If you get in the right sort of part of the house, maybe for the first 3 games, you can kind of plot it so you see like 3 good groups come through. So they would be.
And if that's who you want to follow, then you just kind of move ahead and do the same thing for the last couple games as well.
But they would be kind of my tips. Most times, if you go to the front counter, they have like a schedule sheet, so you can see where the bowls are going to be all day and kind of see what the cross is going to be. And
is Suncoast, is it set up above where the concourse is up? I haven't been there in so long. I don't remember.
It's split, so it's two halves, I believe, from memory. I'm not sure about whether it's down to the lanes or not. I just remember it being split. It might be similar-ish to South Point where it is raised, but it's not raised at the same time.
Like not super high where you don't get a great vantage point necessarily.
But yeah. Yeah, I mean, also, if you're looking to cover a little bit, if you come for the last couple of games of Squad 1, you can kind of watch into Squad 2 because Squad 2, like Squad A and Squad B, each day, there's no re-oil in between. So you kind of don't have as much waiting around.
Yeah, you could come in at like say 9:30, watch 2 or 3 games of A, and in a 3-hour period, you could see 2/3 of the field.
Yeah, so that's another idea. True House Bowler. What is a good layout surface for extreme wet, dry cliff conditions? There's no taper to our house shot, and the pattern looks like a top hat. Okay. For me, I don't really think it's necessarily there's a right answer to this because it depends. In some places, it's better to use the dry, and in some places, it's better to kind of use the oil. And depending on which solution's the best, depends on which ball you're going to use. Is kind of my take.
Yeah, I mean, these days, urethane has become a pretty, with quite a bit of surface on it, has become a kind of go-to for those wet dry type things, and so you can stand a little closer to that cliff and minimize it a little bit. Uh, there's a there's still one guy out on the East Coast that throws a DCT, which is a cliff killer. EPXs once upon a time were kind of the same idea, but by and large, you end up with lower/stronger pins and more surface because they have to hook in the extreme wet part of that pattern. If they don't pick up in the extreme wet part, it won't really matter what happens because you'll have to hit the dry perfectly every time to strike. And so, but jellies, you can go with lower pins or really strong pins, and then typically after that a little more surface if the amount of oil in the pattern allows, and then smoother type covers that aren't super responsive to oil and dry. It unfortunately does depend.
What SPI ball would you recommend for short pin layout for a rev dominant player? Quickly, I think something that I wouldn't use a angular ball for this because it's kind of defeating the purpose. I think the ball that makes the most sense right now, from my mind, is the Exponent. I think it's kind of a decent blend of something that's smooth, not too strong, not too weak.
Just not crazy careful. Dip either. If you're trying to knock out.
The problem is if you drill a 2-inch pin, the 2-inch pin is actually quite strong. So you'll end up like you've got 2 hand life, so you might not have the same issue as some. But what a lot of people are finding now with using some of those short pins is that the ball, because of where the your bow tie, the last flare lines end up flaring up over the thumb hole from below. So you just got to be a little careful. If you think about it, a 2-inch pin sounds like it's weak, but a 2-inch pin is about the same as a 4 3/4-inch pin, which don't sound weak. So just got to be a little careful with that. Sean, love using the Optimus Pearl. Just had 279. What would be a modern comparable to it? It's going to sound crazy, but I actually think based on how much weaker the balls were then, I think that probably the Exponent Pearl is probably going to be the closest, even though it's probably going to be a bit more angular, especially as your Optimus is older. But if you go into, say, something like a Summit Peak is going to be miles stronger than the Optimus, even though by the numbers and by like logic of what you're seeing, that should be close. It's going to be miles stronger. And then something like what's the Gold Label could be another option. That ball's pretty angular also. But they would be the two that come to mind: the Exponent Pearl and the Gold Label.
Up in the senior regional that House Shot was put out the night before, which has a lot to do with, it seems pretty consistent that is an issue. And he was also on the joggers, which in general, my thought is for the PBA, if you have to call them joggers, then they're probably not slacks. But I'm not here to be the get off my lawn guy. But although I think one of the golf guys got taken to task here last week for wearing them, and it wasn't a great look. Speaking of the good and the great, how you doing down there in Oklahoma?
So I just wanted to shout out Aaron. Yep, I'm glad it arrived. He was one of our winners. He said he ordered a shirt also, and I'm super excited to get the my pro shop operator to drill it. So let us know how it goes. Yes, of course it was a penalty. The refs cheated again, bastards.
Hey guys, do you think there should be any other ways to qualify for the Hall of Fame outside of the current ways? Should longevity guys get in, or should he be in the Hall of Very Good?
Doherty isn't really a longevity guy either.
Not really, because he started super late. He is
Well,
48, but he didn't
uh,
start really bowling tour until he's 35.
yeah, I mean, he bowled, but he didn't bowl. Yeah.
His first title was 2020, I believe.
No, it was before that because he won that Bowler's Journal 100. Remember when he won his first title? It was in on the South Point line when they built it
Oh yeah. You're right. You're right.
because they trolled him because it was the Bowler's Journal 100 anniversary and they had the big massive 100 on the masking unit. Remember that now?
I do. Yeah, it was the World Series is kind of his breakout moment where he,
Yeah.
yeah. I do think it's reasonable. The one thing that Fagan's post brought up, I think it's reasonable to say, hey, 5 years after you retire, you're eligible. And the whole point of the 20 years is that when I first came out on tour, I'm bowling against Albie and Walter and Parker and Pete and Voss and Duke. All of them were already in the Hall of Fame. And at least 3 or 4 of them had another Hall of Fame career after I got out there, which was years after they got into the Hall of Fame. So I don't, and from a personal standpoint, like I saw a couple of those Hall of Fame speeches where they then 2 days later went, were trying to win the Tournament of Champions.
Tommy.
And then I got to see somebody like Marshall, who after he was done got in the USBC Hall of Fame, which is another argument altogether. And but it was a much more reflective, a much better speech. He's not still trying to grind out a, hey, what's next? What's next? What's next? He was just appreciative that of what his career was and what it provided for him and the people that helped him along the way. And I just thought it was a much better thing all the way around. But
I think that if you're going to I think if you're going to make special exceptions for people, then no disrespect to Mike, but I think that their case has to be much more like obvious.
Yeah.
Like, so they talk about, like, for example, I'll just use the NFL. Like, Terrell Davis is always one that they debate about whether he should be in the Hall of Fame or he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame because he didn't have the longevity of the running backs, but he was fucking amazing in those 5 years.
He won 2 MVPs in those 5 years.
So, like, if Mike had had a player of the, I understand he was really close, but if he'd have had a player of the year in there, like he had 5 titles, but like 4 of them were majors or something like ridiculous, then you're like going, holy shit. Like Mike was an excellent player, but I don't think there was at any point that anybody thought he was the best player on the tour at any point during his career. And I think that he'd agree with me. Like he wasn't better than you when he was at his peak. Like he wasn't better than Belmo for, once Belmo got to his level.
Yeah.
Like I'd argue whether he was better than Rash. Like, so this isn't to knock on Mike. Mike was an excellent player, but like he didn't have a long career, and his qualification for the Hall of Fame is absolutely right now the bare minimum for qualifying for the Hall of Fame. So it's like, well,
and on top of that, you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday. If he had gotten to this and say he was 5, 6 years, 8 years into his career, had a car accident and was forced to retire, and you go, well, hey, if he would have got to keep competing, had he gotten sick, whatever the case was, that why he had to retire, but he retired on his own.
Yeah.
Free will. It doesn't, and they said, I watched Dale Ballard not get into the Hall of Fame with 13 titles for a while. So guys pleading for 5 and 6 and 7 titles,
with multiple majors.
Yeah.
Dal's case.
Yeah. I mean, I think 7 with 3 majors is the lowest to get in to the regular Hall of Fame. There's a couple on the PBA 50 side.
Well, there's not that many people who have 3 majors.
Yeah, it's like Durbin and I think Mark Williams.
Let's just quickly.
I don't even know how many titles Durbin has, but Mark Williams was the guy when I first came in, and he had 3 tournament champions, or 2 tournament champions and 1 other. So, can I use a strong solid ball on 34-foot short pattern and be successful? Should I get a urethane ball to combat the pattern? What's your rev rate, Mark?
I think yes to both also.
34 feet's pretty short, and urethane will work when you start getting back into that range because there is taper. So really, it's still a 25, 26 foot pattern lots of times. Sometimes they have that drop brush really long.
So just like really to wrap that one up, if you have any further ones, I would say that you can be successful with the solid ball, but I think that at the very start, the urethane ball is going to give you a little bit of like relaxation, would be the way I would describe it.
We used to use the strong solid balls, weak drilled, lower pin.
But you felt like you really had to make
and
sure.
you roll it. Yeah, but you have to have some skill set to go with that. Urethane kind of covers all of that up for you. JV, just bought my first new my first new IQ Ruby. Any layout recommendations? One-handed, 315 res, 15 miles per hour. Not many good pro shops here in Manila. I usually buy used balls before. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, congratulations for getting your first new ball. That's awesome. I would consider
seem pretty well matched.
From what you're suggesting, I would consider doing something along the lines of a 4.5 inch pin to pack and like a 2.5 to 3 inch buffer. So if your pro shop does dual angle, you would do something along the lines of a 60 by 4.5 by like 30. I think that for most people, especially with an IQ Ruby where there's a little less flare, is a pretty good compromise. I think it's a fairly versatile layout, and it should allow you to do most things you want. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I'm right on the same place, which, yeah, it's a little bit in that 4 to 4.5 inch range, which for 80% of the people, maybe a touch more, is a little over your ring finger. And so that'll allow it to flare because it does have a smallish core and allow it to help get around the corner.
Heading to Vegas Saturday, is there room in my bag for 2 urethanes if I don't take a spare ball? Yes. But make sure you've practiced throwing your urethane if you don't take a spare ball, because when you're leaving a lot of spares, missing them gets real pricey.
Yeah.
Like for me, I can't shoot spares. I'm a really good spare shooter, and I absolutely suck at trying to shoot spares with a urethane. And I never make up the pins for giving up my spare ball for using an extra ball. So
yeah, when the extra ball is normally a 10%er.
Yeah.
I mean, and what I mean by that, the chances you're going to use is 10% when there is 100% chance that you're going to use a spare ball. Stu throws it very firm and it's really straight, but he has a little rotation. And so when they get hard, that you only have to chop a couple of spares, and then you start trying to not chop spares,
and then you just have the lady chop, as Martin calls it.
And then you miss a couple more. And now it's 50 pins, and when you're trying to make the top 64, if you don't have great ball reaction, you can make the cuts making spares. But those 50 pins will make it impossible.
He might be talking about going to nationals.
If you're talking to nationals, from what I've seen so far, absolutely. But the same case applies because you're
still going to shoot a lot of spares.
Yeah, you're going to shoot spares. The scores aren't crazy; they are good, and some of the better players are starting to hit them pretty good right now.
Hey James, thank you. I'm seeing all of your super chats. We're a little behind. We got a little bit, so I'm trying to catch up on those now, and then we'll go back through and get them.
Sorry, I got a little long-winded there.
Love the channel advice. Nationals, Arsenal, Gem, Nova, Original Idol, Coral Venom, IQ Tour, Super Rally, or IQ Ruby, and Spare Ball. I think you've got most of the bases covered there pretty good. I don't know enough about the Super Rally to know whether that makes sense over the IQ Ruby or not. So for me, I just take whichever one you like the best. But the top part of the bag, I think it makes sense. I think that Coral Venom's pretty smooth, kind of early as well, from what I've seen when EJ's been using it.
Yeah, I think it can kind of take the place of that urethane shape. You got a couple of balls that are on the that can get in that range if you're good at playing there, and it certainly looks like you can get to play the right on both patterns if you want.
And you've got some of the smoother balls. So yeah, I think it makes sense.
I think you have a pretty good chance there.
Rev challenged 275, 15 miles an hour. Arsenal check for nationals. Harsh Reality or Magic Gem, Infinite Physics, Vibo, Phase 2 or Optimum Idol, Journey, Mix. Any options, substitutions for a 6-ball bag? Well, I personally think even with you having 275 revs, that the Journey is extremely strong to be your weakest ball. Personally, I think that the problem you might find is in singles and doubles, if you end up having to move a little bit left, I think you might find it hard to get the Journey far enough right, because I think it'll pick up a little bit too soon to be the weakest ball. Now, maybe
in that line, probably the Vibo is probably the weakest one.
I was about to say maybe your Vibo might come in, but yeah, I mean, for me, I don't mind Harsh Reality or Magic Gem. I think they both are fairly useful off each other. I think Infinite Physics and then your Phase 2 Optimum Idol are probably going to be the balls that you try and use at the start, probably, from what we've seen. I think the Harsh Reality / Magic Gem is going to be a ball that is like your how can I put this? Your like comfort blanket, just in case you can't get the Idol or the Phase 2 or the Infinite Physics to pick up. And then, like I say, I think the Vibo is a good step down. If you really like the Journey, then I'm sure you can make it work with the Vibo after, but make sure that Vibo's shiny.
Sounds right.
Yeah, they do. Top of the morning. Higgs, left-handed. Okay, 16 miles an hour with medium revs. Currently have Reality, Attention Star, Phase 2, and Duo. Mix any piece. Yes, I think a urethane ball might be, if we're talking about going to nationals, I think a urethane ball would probably be quite helpful. But otherwise,
Duo is pretty strong too for your lowest piece. And I get it. I like how that ball rolls and it kind of keeps it in front of you, but there's Tour Dynamics probably makes a little sense maybe in there as a little more versatile piece. And then certainly a urethane is not out of the question.
Dalton, how you doing, bud? He says, hey guys, was curious if you have any tips for working on consistency, either mentally or physically. It seems my consistency changes week to week. That's part of getting better. And I think that riding the emotional roller coaster is difficult. So as someone who does it, you have to enjoy the success, but you have to find a way to not get as frustrated. Like, because Dalton, I bowl with Dalton. He bowled 760 last week, and then he shoots 570 this week. Or, he didn't shoot anywhere near as high.
Right.
And he's like super down, and rather than enjoying the fact that he shot 760, he's kind of, that's already gone.
And lamenting the 570, yeah.
Yeah. And like Dalton averages right around 200, maybe a little higher. So you've got to understand that like the 760 was way more of an anomaly than 570. 570 isn't really a bad set if you average close to 200.
Right.
So, in regards to consistency, what do you think are like the key pillars to being consistent? Like,
Yeah, I mean, and this obviously kind of mirrors Baker's system, but a lot of push away stuff and a lot of body position, keeping your upper body stable through the beginning of your approach.
he's
And
two-handed also.
yeah,
Just-
and I don't think that actually changes any. I think really being fairly consistent through that, like what you talk about, keeping that long conveyor belt on the kind of pull back on the backswing, and then from a metal, keeping the same focus and keeping it on execution versus always being about results, which I know is much easier said than done, but know the difference between executing good shots that are bad, with the wrong decisions versus just, hey, it struck, even though I missed by 3, but I matched up pretty good tonight.
Yeah. So, like I say, Dalton, I think that you just got to see it as a process and like the incremental, improvement. And what you're really trying to do, the way to be a really good bowler isn't really to have 760s. The way to be a good bowler is to not have sets under 620. And like moving your floor gradually up is how your average will increase really quickly. So basically, what you want to avoid is like, say you have like 3 of those really big sets in a season. You have 3 720 plus series. But if you have like a 480 in there, then you immediately wipe out the good work that you did with that 720.
Yeah.
But if you make it so that your lowest set becomes 550, well, then you still got 70 pins positive for your really good set. So your average starts to move up. So for me anyway, like the reason why I nearly always average one of the highest in the city is because I just don't bowl. Like I don't bowl 620 very often during the season. So it's way easier to average 240 if you never shoot under 650. Because you're going to have, like, when you get higher average, you get, like, it's just relative to your average. But I'm going to bowl at least a couple of 800s every year. Well, that kind of just moves the dial.
We have a bunch to catch up on here, and I do have to be off on pretty much on time today. So,
okay. Aaron, I grew up throwing a Columbia 300, Ty Messenger, Rock, Kudasi. What was your favorite ball back then when you threw 300? Was this before you threw Columbia, though? Were you not a Brunswick?
Ty Messengers, I threw Ty Messengers, not so much Rocks and Kudas. I mean, those momentums were really good. And then before that, you had Detours, you had we had Formula. Formula was actually one of my favorite balls, but the black one, it's been a minute now. I mean, I won with a professional.
I was a fan of the Chris Barnes Select.
Chris Barnes Select it wasn't the worst one ever. Yeah, I liked it.
Big Bully. That was a bully.
I like the Bully better. Yeah, the Big Bully, the red and black.
Red and black one, yeah.
Yep. That was one of the major balls.
And then what was that one that you used like forever? Was it Power Swing or whatever it was?
Yeah, the Power Swing was the one that we found out was a Black Widow cover later on. Yeah. And made more sense because she was good. It didn't fit into my throw it forever strategy though, because it definitely died after some time. But all right, but yeah, thanks for bringing up the Wayback Time Machine.
Yeah, real quick. I know that you wanted to catch up on these, but Eric Kay kind of proves my point. But if a guy like Belmo, if he left the tour tomorrow, yeah, but he's won 31 titles. He's won 6 times more titles than Fagan.
No, I think it's reasonable to say, hey, he left. EJ could leave now. Simo could leave now. And say in 5 years after they retire, yeah, of course they get in. Fagan's problem into the PBA Hall of Fame isn't actually that he doesn't have. I mean, I would say it's just 20 years from when he joined.
Yeah.
Whether he kept paying or not is fine with me. I don't, and that kind of covers that too. The problem is he just didn't have enough. There's a lot of guys that are in that veterans category that went up there, and Jaros got in, but it was a
I mean,
bunch of
that's
guys
what
that
they're
didn't
saying.
have enough.
Jaros had 7 titles and 1 major.
Yeah, in 6 or 7 seconds.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. I thought Fagan was amazing when he bowled.
No, 100%. He was one of the top 5 guys through different stages of his career. Amazing. In USBC Hall of Fame with Team USA and his accomplishments there, 100% in. Plus, he won the Masters, which makes it slam dunk. Ruby, Exponent Pearl Phase 2 house shot. What would you add?
Kind of slow speed.
Yeah, which makes sense. You skewed towards balls down there. Ruby or Phase 2 is your strongest ball. I think that's a good play.
I might add a an asymmetrical pearl ball. So either the Attention Star, which is having a lot of people are liking that one in Austin right now, or the Virtual Energy Blackout. Something that's kind of similar-ish shape to these Exponent and the Ruby, but just more. Like an angular ball, but just more.
Yeah.
Something that'll allow you to hook it a little bit.
Yeah, it could be blackout. It's probably where I would go towards there.
DWK, good morning. Thanks for the advice last week. Just got the DNA call. So would my order be harsh DNA? Harsh reality check DNA. No, I would have it harsh DNA reality check, and then the rest of it. I mean, TNT is an odd one. If that's the original TNT, that's going to be like, for the way we see it, it's going to be way further up the bag. It's going to be more close to like the DNA and the harsh reality because it's super early.
Yeah, if you want urethane, but not actually urethane, that's a candidate. It's also a candidate for probably those super wet dry patterns, I would guess. But yeah, Stu's got it nailed.
Duo is another one that could be considered in front of the gold label because for me the Duo is a little early, but it hooks a little less overall.
Yeah, flares less, but hooks earlier. So how you put in your lineup. Overall hook, probably less.
Yeah.
Length of hook, it's probably earlier. Mark Livingston from earlier, we asked what his rev rate was, and it's 350. So I think that's enough to have a urethane ball to play on those short patterns for 100%. Sure. Yeah, just either the purple or the pitch black. I think you'd go ahead and get the stronger ones.
Yeah. Is it dumb to give up on a ball after one game? Yes, 100%. I'll give you an example. I drilled the DNA coil with the pin above the ring finger, which is about 5.5-inch pin. Now, the original one that I drilled on the tour that I really like is below the ring finger, like a down layout. And that makes the most sense in my mind for where that ball is going to fit in my arsenal, for where I want to use it. But we do the ball videos, and I've done them, and I've got them recorded, and I've got most of the editing done. But anyway, when I use it, I have to drill the same layout as I do all the ball videos for in my mind, because it doesn't really make any sense for me to change layout all the time when I'm in the same bowling center all the time and everything. So you guys get a better idea. And also, I've got all the balls drilled that way, kicking around. So it's much easier for me to do the comparisons as well. So anyway, I drilled it and I didn't touch the surface. And I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. Like, it looks so bad. Like, I felt like it hooked super early and didn't continue, or it just missed the spot. Anyway, I was practicing the next day and I slightly scuffed it. And I mean, slightly, just basically grazed over the surface. And then I shot 300. Same ball. And it's just like, you just got to be a little careful. Like, you don't necessarily need to change the surface that much to suddenly open your eyes to like a whole new, especially with shiny balls. So don't be like my wife. Don't be an instant hater. So
there you go. Do you find more players find asymmetrical balls are used more often than symmetric now? Don't see many sims and find it hard to use in 2024.
I agree.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the higher end balls are asymmetrical. And this is a theory that Stu had long before I did. I was way more about symmetrical balls on wet dry, but the asymmetricals do pick up more in oil, and as patterns get to be more wet dry, getting the balls to pick up in that oil is more that's one of the biggest keys. And so if you use that asymmetry the right way, it actually blends it out. It can help you blend it out.
I just think while like the way the patterns are developing and the way the lanes are, they just seem to get more and more oil down the lane, even on the house shots. So having that extra bit of like dynamism in the core, they've been a little bit more powerful. It seems to help.
Right. Good argument could be made for Robert Smith with 7 wins. Injuries held him back. I don't think he has a lot of majors in there, but
he does have a U.S. Open,
and he also bowled for a long time before the injuries hit him.
I know this is going to sound a little fanboy-ish, but I do think there is like when they're going to start adding people in to the Hall of Fame, I think there is a certain thing that gets added for being like that iconic player.
Yeah.
Like, and Robert was that.
He was.
Like him or dislike him, I think he's a good dude, but I just think that like there was a certain group of people who just wanted to bowl like Robert Smith.
No, I think Robert's a good guy, and I think he was good for the PBA, and he was EJ before EJ. He was two-handed before two-handers. He looked like the prototype of what, I mean, the swing was straight, lines were good. He was like the next evolution of Mark Roth in a lot of ways. I mean, he was a power guy with more. Everything looked in place.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a bit like Timmy never getting in the World Bowling Hall of Fame. Like, not quite in the same way, but I mean, like Tim was like almost the most iconic player in the world, like around, like, because he was the guy everybody saw. Like the rest of the world didn't see Pete Weber. Like they just weren't around. Like he went to Japan or whatever, or he did a few appearances, but it wasn't like Timmy was the guy you saw. Like there's so many of the European players who their favorite bowler was Timmy because like he turned up and like none of us could do what he could do. And we hadn't really like, the best bowlers in Europe were like Mika and like Thomas Lee Anderson, and even Mika to that extent was kind of gone really before most of us. But like you'd see Thomas Lee Anderson, you see Torre, and then you'd see Timmy, and it's just like, holy shit. And like when Fagan came over, we were just like amazed by Fagan because he looked like he didn't. Because Timmy looks like he makes the ball do what it does.
Yeah, he's strong as a bull and just
it's brute strength. Fagan's hooking it just as much as him, and he looks like a librarian.
He's
like
Gumby.
Yeah, it's just like he looks like he's making no effort at all, and his ball looks like it's actually screaming going down the lane.
Yeah, he can make it do some cool things. And so,
hey Glenn, what's up? 12X's. How does the PBA determine the number of exempt players each year? And I believe this year is different from last year.
It's gone from 50 to 43, and there's tour trials that's come back.
So in their mind, it's gone from 50 to 54, I guess.
It'll be 55, I think. I think it's 12 guys. I think is where they said it was 12 guys for the tour trials. And
that question is definitely what me and Chris would clarify as above our pay grade. Right-handed, 490 to 500. Congratulations on that. Would the attention star fit in my arsenal? I have a Summit, a Phase 2, a Vibo with 2K surface, a Sublime, and a Night Road. if I was going to add an attention star, I'd polish the Vibo back up and I'd have a little bit of surface on the attention star.
Yeah.
From what I've seen so far, I think the Vibo works better as a skid flip type of ball, whereas the attention star I think would be better if it picked up a little earlier and was like a step down from your face.
Agree. I like a Vibo down. It's clean enough anyway that the down ends up making it hook in the mid lane and down lane without picking up as much in the front. And the tension star is just stronger in the mid lane overall. And so with a little bit of sort of, like Stu said, it just separates them both, makes them both very usable because you get a lot of symmetricals in there with it.
H, as someone who doesn't use a lot of urethane, what are some of the things you're looking for to line up on patterns, say for Nationals example? I personally think that the biggest thing that people do wrong with urethane is they don't have enough surface on it. I think
if you're using urethane, you're trying to get it to pick up quick.
Yes.
So you're getting control of the lane. And in like Nationals, it takes gutter out of play. You can throw it a little bit to the right. It picks up soon enough that it's not going to go in the gutter. If it goes in the gutter, you're probably not playing that close to it anyway. And so it's just a way to control the back end too. So,
yeah, like I say, it's a different shape with your eyes, and you kind of make it, like Chris is saying, you want to control it, but you're going to feel like every shot you throw with urethane's about to go through the nose and it'll lay. Is kind of how I see it a lot of the time. You're welcome, Dalton. Wow, that one was a little rough. The fact that Chris won the World Championships with that one. You very good bowler.
what about Harry Solons? Well, self-promotion was a category.
Yikes.
He nicknamed himself Legend.
I know.
Himself.
Great. Great. It's awesome. And I believe it's the Legend.
It may be. I don't know.
I've got it in the same bag. I think that the reality check was a little cleaner. But
yeah, I think it was a little cleaner, a little sharper. For me, it got a little more forward, where the coil I feel like has a little more rounded off shape to it, but it's in the same.
And then DNA core similar to the exotic gem. I think the exotic gem's a little less controllable.
Yeah. For me, it felt like the exotic was a little earlier and got forward.
Yeah.
Kind of spun up quick.
For me, that was a hard one to control, the exotic gem.
Yeah.
Should Thane be...
Makes sense. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go with this one.
Oh, okay. Best guess for USP to start for a stroke. Absolute Power might be a good play. That's a ball that, if it's not shined up, shiny, they can come off of it pretty hard. But
I'm actually going to see if I can do a little bit of scouting when we're in Vegas, because we have a lot of time off at the Masters and I'm hoping to have a car. So I'll probably pop over to South Point a couple of times and try and get eyeballs, because I go at the start of May. So hoping that we can get some videos dialed in to kind of help you guys. The last few
congrats to Haggett and Grandpa for winning again at Clutch. Those guys win a lot together everywhere they're at. And
hey, like I say, they're both left-handed. It makes it hard for me to be like, yay, congrats.
They do bowl good together, though.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have very many bad weekends.
I was about to say that Haggett's almost certainly one of the best 50s in the field, and Graham Farr is definitely one of the best non-50s in the field. So the fact that two really good bowlers bowl together and they win isn't exactly like, no way, they won. Oh, my God. Like,
yeah, when you get a couple guys that like each other and they bowl together, it's,
But let's just blame him being left-handed. Should Thane be thrown in team at Nationals? Do the teammates need to play off it, or do I need to be thrown reactive? It depends. Only two-handers on the team. If you've only got two-handers on the team, then yes, you're going to need.
Yeah, probably, because you guys can all got enough hand to get around the same spot. The one thing that has shown up on tour this year so far is that the 78 hardness ones tends to make the lanes easier as it goes on, if you can get those to hook enough, because they hook less down lane. They create hold if you have to get out of it. Versus when you're hooking the soft urethanes and you're hooking around it, you're just pushing a lot of oil down lane, and anyone who can't, it's so far right, it's hard to get around that spot. And so all you're kind of doing is making the ball wiggle when you get back to the responsive covers. That's my take.
Basketball bowlers. Oh, basket bowlers. Established 2022. Thanks for the super chat. Two-handed lefty, 430 RPMs, 17 miles an hour. So you're just a little bit faster and a little bit more revs than Russo. Kind of in my
Is that 17 off the hand, or is that up on the monitor? If it's up on the monitor, you're about 19 and a half. That's matched up pretty good.
Nationals Bowlers Journal Arsenal. Gem, clone with surface, purple, new blue, optimum, Vibo, Zengo label, Rip mix. Might be a couple of lefties on the pair, replace anything. I personally think that for a lefty going to nationals, you've got a few too many angular balls. Personally. I don't think you need the Vibo and the gold label.
It's quite possibly in either order.
I just don't think you're going to need that much. And then the Rip as well.
Yeah, on the left, I can see the Rip because it's a little different shape profile. It doesn't flare as much, so you can get shape without having to force you right as much. But yeah. The Vibo will almost certainly push you right.
I personally like the Gem better than the clone.
Agreed.
It's been the Gem the last few years at nationals has been pretty good, I think.
And it's a pretty good ball off urethane if you have to get out of it too.
Purple, obviously. New blue to me has looked better on easier shots than it has on sport patterns. On sport patterns, I feel like it doesn't really offer you what a true urethane offers you. So I feel like it kind of misses the spot down lane and then gets sort of oh, sorry. I've just seen on my other screen he actually added. He said also have a Scorpion low flare and a Tour Dynamics. Okay, now we're talking. I personally would get rid of at least one of those of the Zengo label or the Rip personally to bring in the Tour Dynamics. And then I don't know enough about that Scorpion low flare, but to me, I would be, if I was on the left, I would be looking for balls that had a kind of a smoother shape, and all I would be changing is how clean they were through the front. I would have the one ball that I could move right and really go around it, which I think would be the Vibo. But I wouldn't be looking for a bunch of balls that were quick, because I just don't think you're going to need them. That's not how lefties strike anymore.
Right. I'm going to have to wrap this up here, but
okay. Well, I can keep answering questions for a little minute. So
yeah, we have a couple. I appreciate you guys, and we'll keep collecting information. It's starting to pour in a little bit about nationals, and maybe we'll we can get something together for you. So
he said, good to see you got the sign working.
Well, it's always worked. We have some new updates with the Logitech camera, so I've been playing around with it, trying to get to where you can at least see it, but we'll see. Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
All right,
guys,
see you, Chris.
Enjoy. Out.
All right, well, I can get back to how I thought the show was going to be, which was just me and you guys. Higgs, being a lefty, do you think I should have a weaker ball than the Duo and Exponent Pearl? It depends what you're bowling on. If you're talking about going to nationals, maybe. The Exponent Pearl is pretty angular, though. So, yeah. For me, I never really see lefties use those balls very much. So, yeah. What's up, Luis? All right, let's just answer a few more. If you got any more super chats, bang them in. I'm going to pick up a couple of questions at random and see what's going on. Dan, Absolute Power or Eternity Pie for the solid ball for Vegas, and DNA Coil or Attention Star as the Pearl, which do you believe is more controllable? I personally like the Absolute Power. I think the Eternity Pie gets to be a little bit quick. So I like the Power better, the shape it makes, but I like the Absolute a lot. So take that for what it's worth. DNA Coil or Attention Star. I mean, for me, the Attention Star is a little cleaner than the DNA Coil. I think they're both. I think they're both pretty smooth, though. So, yeah. Overall, I think the Attention Star is probably a little more controllable. So, Adam, you always have all the answers. So, I don't know. What is your question? Hey, Chris uses a different grip because he wants it to come off quicker. I don't know that it's as big a difference now as it used to be. But basically, it was because he used to have a little forward in his thumb on his strike ball, and that allowed him to get his hands at different spots. But with his spare ball, he really just wanted it to flop off, really just fly off his thumb. So it was a little longer, he had more reverse. So that was kind of why he did that. So yeah. Hey Chris, thinking about going to nationals, thinking maybe Magic Gem, V-Bone, Sublime. Yeah, I think they're all fairly good suggestions. Yeah, I think they'll give you something good. I might consider a symmetrical solid like a phase 2 or an idol though. So when you shine up your reality, what surface is that typically at? I usually do like 500 or 1,000 and then put the polish on. I don't know what that translates to using one of those surface scanner things. I've never done that, so I don't know. Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks again, guys, for coming on. I don't tend to go up to the Ozarks. It's quite the hike from Austin, so I tend to miss that one. Anyway, let's thanks, Caitlin. Thank you. Hey, Matt says, thanks for the input on the matchmaker. Attention Star is amazing. Glad you enjoyed it. A lot of people are really liking that ball at the minute. That's one of the best balls we've had from the feedback I've seen from a lot of the house bowlers. They really like that one. Hope the duo would be. So, all right. Let me find this banner. Which one am I supposed to use? Let's do that one. So, thank you guys for showing up. If you get a chance, please support the sponsors that support us. Storm, Rotor Grip, 900 Global, Turbo Vice, Coolwick, 3G Shoes, Bowlers Mart, Mark Baker Bowling, Firelight Bowling Set, Platinum Ford, and Lightning Strikes. With that, I will see you guys on Thursday. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye now.